We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement, one of my favorite segments of the entire week. Of course, it's the Trade Targets video with Sigmund Bloom, co-owner of Football Guys. Sig, how was your week 7? Welcome back to the program, my friend.
Joe, it was breathtaking.
Yeah, it was a great week of football to watch, wasn't it?
It was, and I think that it had a conjunction almost in an astronomical kind of way of those three endings of those games. And what you have to love about football is that all these stories fit into these larger epic novels or operas. You know, the Atlanta loss, Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham and how all that fit together. The Steelers, I could go on and on about my Steelers neurosis. But also you saw how emotional football is. It's interesting because even without fans in the stands, you can tell that the emotional intensity that comes from these teams, and I'm really looking at it, honestly, Joe, I'm looking at the Cowboys. I'm looking at the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
It was striking. Just the depression that has swept over those teams. I think it shows the complete mind, body, and soul buy-in that professional football players have to play the game. You know, if you don't have that, it's like trying to cross a freeway. On foot. I mean, you're just going to get smashed. And, it was just a reminder of everything that's laid out there and just that we'll enjoy every week of football we can get.
I was pretty fortunate that I played on some really good teams during my career. I very rarely was on like some teams where you had to just get up knowing that you were just completely outmatched on the other side. Right. But how do these Houston Texans guys, like literally, even on defense in general, like a guy like J.J. Watt, like, I mean, they have to realize at this point that they're just overmatched in terms of talent, right?
Yeah, and with the Texans, whether it's Deshaun Watson saying stuff sucks, honestly, that's not actually what he said, or J.J. Watt and his responses yesterday, they threw the ball and they caught the ball. That I almost feel like it's post-traumatic in the sense that now that the Bill O'Brien era is over, and now that the players that have poured themselves into this blueprint and this team see that it's going to result in nothing that culminates anywhere close to what they expected, that now the emotion is setting in of the letdown, the ultimate letdown, I think. And I think that we probably underestimate the amount of belief in self, belief in each other that these players have to put it out there. And again, it's just, I'm kind of in awe of it in a way, because I think that's part of what makes the game so compelling, is that sacrifice in a way that, players count on each other and count on their coaches too, to put them in positions to win. And the ultimate disappointment sounds like such an underwhelming way to put it.
Yeah.
But, again, just go back and watch. If you watch Watt, you watch Watson. I think there's that element that's unseen of the emotional buy-in by the players that really fuels the intensity of the game.
They're almost just like working off of adrenaline, kind of after their first, they lose their coach and their GM. Everyone's just like, okay, we're going to turn the corner here. And now a couple of weeks removed from that, they realize the mess that they were left with on the other side. So that's tough. Exactly. I guess there was also some pretty positive stuff that happened. I mean, as a Cardinals fan personally, I really enjoyed that game last night, obviously. Two of those teams, it's a fun division to watch right now. So I was pretty excited about my Cardinals. Obviously, your Steelers are getting healthier. They look pretty solid. Is it too early to call them a Super Bowl contender? I know you probably never want to jinx it, all that good stuff, but you got to feel pretty good about your Steelers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not too early. And in fact, if they would have held that lead and won going away yesterday, then you would have heard the Super Bowl favorite talk. Mm-hmm. But I think because really they got lucky, they got bailed out. Honestly, they should have lost that game. And, they had a call, the intentional grounding go their way, and just the momentum stopped for the Titans. And then Steven Gostkowski pushed that kick to the right. So that reminds them that no matter how well they're playing, they can't coast in a game, in the NFL game, especially against a team with the mental toughness of the Titans, because look, next week, the Ravens, I still think there's the Chiefs, until further notice, they're still the king of the hill. So it's great. My Steelers neurosis says this is just another iteration, though, of how Mike Tomlin, this team absorbs his cool, calm demeanor, which means when they have a lead, they let up. And that's something you can never do when you're in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting test this week. I'm excited to watch that game personally against the Ravens. I think that's the statement game, right? So that'll be
Yeah.
good. So Sig, people got to get their trade targets, right? It's that time of
Yes.
the year where this is a
Yes.
very, very important time of the year. Two of the names that I saw on your sheet, and I think they're both going in different directions, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. What do we do with guys like Dalvin Cook? But also, if you have Ezekiel Elliott, is that a guy that we're actively looking to trade away at this point? What's the Dalvin Cook versus Zeke? Like, let's take the temperature on that situation first.
Sure. So these are both guys that I think you should be looking to trade, and for two different reasons. In the case of Dalvin Cook, you have him coming back off of a bye. I will wait and see the practice reports, wait and see if he's ready to play against the Packers this week. But when you look ahead and you see that his playoff schedule is, and I guess in the year 2020, why are we looking ahead to December and making any plans as they revolve around what's going to happen in December or not happen? But when you look ahead, you've got the Tampa Bay run defense. We saw what they did to Josh Jacobs last week. You know, they're keeping good running backs under 2 yards carry. The Bears, who we'll get to watch tonight, and then the Saints, who also had a great day stopping the run against the Panthers. And also that's a Minnesota team. So that depression that is setting in for the Texans, I think that's where the Vikings are headed. I think also you're going to see with the trade deadline, some of these teams trade away some of the longtime cornerstones, you know, basically conceding that this blueprint's not going to work. Plus, with Dalvin Cook, there's like a sense of like injury inertia with him, right? Like when he's injured, he's likely to stay injured in some way. So before he even gets back on the field, it's probably the best time to lock in whatever value he has.
Yeah, I mean, if you waited,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if you waited too long on Ezekiel Elliott at this point now, like you might not even have Andy Dalton. So where is this offense left with you? Like at this point, like you're probably gonna have to trade Zeke plus a significant piece even to get to like that next tier, even anywhere close to a running back one. So I guess well, let's talk about Zeke for a second before we talk about the other guy on your list.
Well, you're getting hopefully some name value. Like you're happy to take 50 cents on the dollar for Zeke at this point. And you just want to see if somebody else thinks they're getting the other side of the psychology here, saying, oh, the Cowboys offense is bottomed out. It can't stay this bad. But again, tying back into our little keynote at the top there, Joe, you saw DeMarcus Lawrence saying this team doesn't have belief in itself. This team doesn't have anybody that's really helping them. We're good players. We can be a good team. And I don't think Mike McCarthy's that guy. I don't think that this franchise, and it may be some culture that was left over. It's Jerry Jones culture, you know, but I just see this starting to go from bad to worse. I mean, Washington, Joe, we would have had Washington, in the bottom 6 or 8 teams, right? Going into week 7, they buried the Cowboys, and that's before Andy Dalton got hurt.
It's true.
They buried the Cowboys. So I think this is one of those cases where you smell blood in the water. Opponents are going to smell blood in the water. And I just think with Elliott, you also saw cracks in his confidence with the fumbling. I just think that this is one of the situations where week after week, you're going to start Zeke expecting to get something, and you're going to be disappointed. And it's best to get out ahead of that. You know, you can trade him straight up, hopefully, maybe get someone like James Robinson. I would even be honestly willing to get anybody that I know that I would feel comfortable starting at any position, because I don't think Zeke's going to be like that soon enough.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because the name value is only going to take you so far depending on what type of league you're in. But I'm with you. I'm ready to kind of cut my ties and wipe my hands a little bit of that situation. The offensive line issues, obviously the injuries that they have is a big part of it. Against a team like Washington that does pressure very well, we saw that they were just exposed on that regard. So in terms of some guys that you might be trading for, is this the David Montgomery, Allen Robinson portion that we need to get into with these Chicago guys? I do think they're interesting.
They're interesting, and we will get to watch them tonight. Mm-hmm. And I actually think this is going to be an ugly, ugly game. These two teams actually have played each of the last 2 years. I think the score is like 17-6, 17-7, something like that. It's going to be a defensive game. So in this way, we're baking in, to an extent, the idea that you're going to watch a lot of offensive futility tonight. But I do think Allen Robinson is going to face, Jalen Ramsey. David Montgomery is not exactly getting a lot of holes open for him. But again, if we look ahead, I don't know if you could have a more ideal playoff schedule for the Bears, who are going to be playing for a playoff spot unless they completely collapse. They're going to face Houston, Minnesota, and Jacksonville in weeks 14 to 16. And these are quickly turning into the kind of matchups that are showing us you want to play everybody against them. Look at and Jamal Williams is actually a good player, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he ends up in free agency next year. Maybe someone whose value could grow, but Houston, Minnesota, they just traded away their best pass rusher during their bye. Where's that headed? And then Jacksonville. So I think, and that's a team that is like a weekend at Bernie's franchise. And I think you're going to see them start to run out of gas. Also, so I just think that the Bears offense will likely be one of the best offenses for those 3 weeks, even though right now they're going to feel like an offense that is mediocre at best.
Is this the time of year, Sig, that you want to start looking even further towards the fantasy playoffs? Yeah. Is it too early for that? It can't be, right? No. This is like when you got to be making your big time plans for that push, right?
Absolutely, Joe. And I think that on a larger level, more than any individual target, what you want to be doing right now is consolidation trades. You want to be doing 2-for-1s, 3-for-2s, and you want to be focusing. And now, what I'm talking about, I'm talking to you if your team is about to be 6-1 or 5-2, or otherwise you look at your team and you feel confident you're going to be in your playoff bracket, that you want to consolidate the capital that you have into your starting lineup. And I understand, based on what we've seen already, I forget who it was that was putting the numbers out there. Like, I think Tom Kesnick might have put it out there. Like, half of the players drafted in the top 48 have missed at least one game. So a lot's going to happen between now and then. And again, it might seem foolish planning for a month and a half out when we see how much has changed already. But I think that's the way to go for the gold. And I also think that's the way, on the other hand, to look for teams that are 3-4 or teams that are on the brink and feel like they're in must-win situations and try to help them improve their starting lineup right now. So you may help them at some positions that are holes for them. And then that allows you to kind of it's almost like chess, Joe. Like, you want to checkmate. You've got 1 or 2 pieces that have been your key pieces. You want to get that third piece that gives you the unfair advantage at quarterback or tight end or whatever it is that is missing that would really tie your lineup together.
Yeah, if you're fortunate enough at this point of the year to have had enough depth to make it through some injuries, to make it through certain bye week situations, like I'm with you, Sig. I think this is the time where you need to start consolidating some of those assets. Like, if you're active on the waiver wire, if you did well in the draft, there's a chance that you have some pieces that might help some teams get into the playoffs. So this is the point where you really need to kind of load up on those league-winning type of players. One position that I've struggled with a lot this year in DFS, just because it seems gross overall, is tight end. So what do you think about Mike Gesicki as a potential trade guy that we could be going after? He's not necessarily in that bottom tier for me. Like, he's still in that mid-range, not quite the Mark Andrews type of level. We know there's ceiling there, and there's definitely value in that in the position.
And the last we saw of Gesicki, we were worried about Adam Shaheen. It's another interesting one that gets out of the Bears organization. That seemed like they had really soured on him, and now Miami's getting something out of the former second round pick. And look, we're just hinging this on one piece of data, okay? But we did get word from Omar Kelly, who's covered the Dolphins for a long time, that Gesicki is on the scout team with Tua Tagovailoa. And they've been running full speed routes together. And, we're looking for some sort of indicator of who is going to benefit from this change. And by the way, just as an aside, I would love to see Ryan Fitzpatrick get traded. I mean, just as a
Can we get him to the Cowboys, please? That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. A miracle, or the Patriots. Yeah. Doubt that would happen, but it would be a Halloween miracle if we can get to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick start somewhere for the second half of the year. So you want to try to get some sort of edge, try to get out ahead of who's going to benefit from this quarterback change. And I think that Gesicki is cheap enough as it is because of his up and down profile, but he also has shown us that ceiling. So physically he's talented enough to fulfill his ceiling. We just need a quarterback who's going to look his way. We might have that because of this familiarity between the two of them.
Antonio Gibson, Sig, this is one that I've struggled with a lot because we haven't seen that crazy volume performance from him yet. Right. It hasn't been super reliable yet. Do you think that we kind of turned the corner on Antonio Gibson to be a guy that we could be trading for, or are we kind of selling high on him after his finally having his kind of breakout game?
I'm not going to say that he is a player that is as limited as Kenyon Drake looked going into this week. But if you rewind to last week, Kenyon Drake had that game against Dallas, pretty high visibility game. He finished it out with a 69-yard touchdown run. And there were people, I think, immediately trying to sell high on Drake off of that one game. Now, how they're feeling today is I think based on how greedy they got. Because if you tried to truly cash in the trade value of the draft capital, like a late first, early second round pick, you weren't going to get that. But if you just sold him to the highest bidder, whoever that was, you're feeling good. And you would have been feeling good even if he hadn't gotten hurt. Because I think if you've been watching the Cardinals, you're a Cardinals fan, what we saw last night as far as the burst and the freshness that Edmonds brings to the offense versus Drake is nothing new, but now it's undeniable. Now, I'm not saying that J.D. McKissick or Peyton Barber or something like that they're not going to do that to Washington. What I am saying is that playing Dallas makes a running back look like their idealized form.
Yep.
And that's what we saw from Gibson. And I'm not saying that Gibson isn't going to have some more good days, but if you look ahead, I mean, first of all, he's on his bye this week. Giants run defense is okay. Detroit's run defense is okay. Cincinnati, he does get Dallas again. Then you're going to get Pittsburgh. You're going to get San Francisco. You're going to get games against, game against Seattle that I think is going to probably require them to abandon the run. My point is that this might be as good as he looks as far as a trade target. And there's somebody out there that thinks this is the game that lit the fuse, and now Gibson's going to be that guy. But I really think we're going to see this as a trend going forward, Joe, where whoever plays Dallas is going to create expectations that they can't live up to in the weeks ahead. But Gibson is a player that excites people so much that you might find somebody who's not thinking about that when they're making an offer for him.
Sig, I need 30 seconds on Antonio Brown from you. I know you've watched him a lot over the years with your Steelers. Are you excited about him in Tampa Bay? What does this mean for guys like Godwin, like Evans? Evans is already someone that I was a little bit concerned about. I would imagine that's twofold now. I think Godwin's probably safe, but I want your take on it before we get out of here. Yeah.
Honestly, the biggest thing here is it gives all of us, unless you're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan from birth, form and function to the season to root against Tampa. You know, it's like, as long as Tampa doesn't win the Super Bowl, this is fun. And look, we need a heel, we need a villain, and Tom Brady bringing Antonio Brown to Tampa gives us that villain. But I actually think that I probably bet the over on expectations, just because I think there's strong indications that Mike Evans is hurt and is going to be playing hurt all year. Rick Stroud, who covers the team, basically indicated that they're not upset or disappointed with him. He's actually doing a great service. We'll see it this week against the Giants, right? He's going to take James Bradberry out. Oh, isn't that a great trade? I think, again, chess, right? Yeah. If you can trade Mike Evans for James Bradberry, that's a good trade, because now we're seeing Brady start to click on those crossing routes, start to click on the throws that are his natural throws, and Evans going downfield on that sideline can clear out for those kinds of throws. And I do think the personal relationship between Brady and Brown is going to be a big deal here. In the back of my mind, and maybe, Joe, it's because I'm kind of rooting for it. I mean, I don't root for failure. I shouldn't say that. But you want the world to adhere to your expectations. You want the universe to be comforting. And Antonio Brown being the undoing of another team in some way would be comforting. So I think there is the chance of the bottom dropping out. I wouldn't be against trading Antonio Brown off of expectations right now. It might be better to wait for that Saints game, because the Saints have just been prone to big breakdowns in the secondary. We saw it again yesterday against DJ Moore, where maybe Antonio Brown comes out of the gate really hot, and then you can get an extra tick up in the trade value, and then you can trade him and join the rest of us in rooting for the downfall of the Buccaneers.
Tough team to root for, Sig. So I'm with you. Maybe he has a couple big weeks here, and if you do have Antonio Brown, maybe that's when you make the move. So I'm with you on that. Sigmund Bloom, everyone, co-owner of Football Guys. Obviously, I say it every week, but if you're very serious about fantasy football and you haven't checked out footballguys.com, I would obviously recommend you do that. It's where I started my fantasy journey. Just always want to mention that. Sig, best of luck in week 8 already. We'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Always look forward to it. Thanks, Joe.